us know.
Okay. And I've texted and
Yes.
called everybody. All three, Michael, Joycelyn, and Ron. So hopefully that was fun.
All right, and we should be live now, Brent.
Thank you. This is Brent Schondelmeyer. This is the building committee for the Mid-Continent Public Library. It's January 27th, 2022. Committee members, you want to call roll for the moment, Teresa?
Sure. Brent,
Here.
Michael, Joycelyn, Yummy,
Here.
Michelle,
Here.
Ron, and John Laney is absent.
Okay. They're absent a quorum, but I think we're going to cover some informational items in the hopes that other committee members can sort of join us. I'm not going to ask for a formal adoption of the agenda because, well, actually I am going to ask for a formal adoption of the agenda. So somebody want to move approval?
So move.
All right,
Yeah.
second. Okay.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. So we have an agenda and we're going to suggest that we go down to item 5.1, which is construction update. And I'm going to turn it over to our staff.
Jake, I believe you're online, correct?
Yes, I am.
Okay, do you
Can
want
you
to
hear me?
Yeah, go ahead and walk us through the construction update, please.
Okay, well, let's see. One of the biggest things that we have gone through with the construction update, if you can go to the next slide, please. Here's the dashboard. It didn't change significantly. It actually didn't change at all from the board meeting. And if you have any questions on that, I'll answer them as I can. I'm going to go ahead and have them go to the next slide, though. So here's capital improvement plan status. All right, and so we didn't have a meeting in December, and so this is a little slim, but let me go to the next slide to tell you what we did last month. We had a pretty busy month with rededications. We did the Parkville rededication on 10 December, and then the next week we did the Grandview rededication on December 16th, and then the next day we did the East Lee Summit rededication. And so all three were well attended. It was really nice to see the branches again. Obviously, I've been out there a few times here and there, but it was nice to see all the people, the public, the community, and how much they love their libraries. Oh, and we also got our a substantial completion on at the Woodneath Auditorium in December. So next slide. And in January, we got our certificate of occupancy for the Woodneath Auditorium. Now the auditorium is substantially complete, but we are still waiting for some vital pieces, supply chain issues. I'm sure you've heard those before. Basically, we're waiting for some stuff in the booth, some production stuff to be able to make sure that we have really good presentations. It's gorgeous. I do believe we have some pictures that we can show you, but and it's ready to go, but we're not quite ready to do productions. Next slide, please. Next slide. Did it go? So next month, I've got 10 February. It might be a little bit earlier, but next month we start the North Oak demolition. The actual demolition of the building begins. We're finalizing our permits and paperwork. If you want to drive by one last time, it's still up. I've got some pictures of it, but it will be going down shortly. So pretty exciting. It's going to be a really, really awesome building when it gets done, and I can't wait to see it. So that's the status. Do I have any questions?
Michelle, this is Brent Schondelmeyer. I'm happy to join you the day that it's demolished. So if staff wants to let us know, happy to meet you on site.
If I'm in town, I'd love to be there.
Okay.
Oh, there's a trailer. There's a trailer in the parking lot, and I think Jim's got extra yellow vests and hard hats for people. So
Sledgehammers.
Sledgehammers.
Yeah. So we've been. Go ahead, Jake. Sorry.
I will let you know. I will tell you, it's not as all conclusive. It takes a while to go, but you want to come and see it, that'll be awesome.
All right. I've been informed that Michael has joined us, and so he's
Yes,
online.
I'm here
Okay, good.
finally. Sorry I'm late.
No,
So
we're fine.
I apologize. Do we have any pictures? What's the next slide look at? Ah, we do. Do you mind, Brent, if I finish
Sure,
this up with the
please.
pictures?
Please.
So here's our pictures of the auditorium to start with. It's a gorgeous building. You can see the fixed auditorium seats. If you look at that picture to the upper left, you can see the what the main stage is going to look like. And just to the right, you can't really see it because it's not down, but we actually have a wall that'll come down, so it'll enclose the auditorium really nicely if we want to have a little bit more of an intimate space seating. And then on the upper right, you can see the green that we chose for the color. I think it really makes it pop. The stage is also really nice wood grain. Then the two pictures on the bottom are different perspectives of the actual the foyer, the entryway, the moss wall with a quote from Studs Terkel, and of course benches and seats and stuff. So next slide. And here is Green Hills. Green Hills is hopping. It is, I mean, it seems like every time I go out there, I try to get out there at least once a week, once every 2 weeks. They've just completed more and more and more. The roof's up, all the mortar masonry on the outsides are pretty much complete. You can see the beginnings of what's going to look like you can see the cafe in the upper right, that whole blank space. That's the cafe. And then down below, we got the HVAC and where the walls are going up. It's just a really impressive sight as we keep going, although it's very messy. I had to get my car cleaned last time I was out there. It's kind of ugly. So next slide, please. And here's Lee Summit, which is also progressing nicely. One of the things I always tell people about Lee Summit is you're going to know the library is there because we are building an excellent facade on the front to make sure that we can announce that this is the library. Now, most people know where it is, but it's great for the ability to see it and know that it is in fact a Mid-Continent Public Library. We got the HVAC going up in here and some of the walls. The exterior is pretty much done. If you look in the upper right, you can see the kind of the drive-through window and the employee entrance. And so I believe that's my last slide. Again, if there is any questions or if there's anything else I can do, please let me know. We're really rolling right along.
Any questions? Thank you, Jake. I'm going to jump back and ask for approval of the minutes that are in the meeting material. It's board docs. It appears our last meeting was October 14th. So can somebody open to making a motion?
So move.
Second.
Second, Michael.
Okay. Any discussion?
No.
Okay.
Well,
all
not for
those
me.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed? Anybody abstaining? The motion has passed. So our next order of business, and I'm glad that there are 4 of us here, is Grain Valley. Understand we, as a building committee, spent a lot of time really talking about the property acquisition, about how to obtain the site and the price to pay for the site. That was successful. So we own a site and now we want to put a building on it. We are joined in the room by our construction manager at risk and our design team. And there is a presentation that is in board docs. I'm going to suggest is that we go through the presentation, maybe allow us to complete the presentation, and then there'll probably be questions along the way. But I think it's important to kind of see it fully before we start trying to kind of dive in on any particular point. So I'm going to turn this over to our staff. And this is a presentation on considerations about building a library in Grain Valley. which as a point of reference, we do have a location in Green Valley. It's in a rental facility and a shopping center. So this would be a permanent building that we would construct and own.
And so just a little bit more in terms of setting the stage. This is Steve. We wanted to talk to you a little bit about scope and program for our Green Valley project as it relates to economic and conditions and what we've been seeing in the market. While this does affect Green Valley, it does also have impact on the remaining projects, or the information that will be presented has impact on the remaining projects. We are not at a point where we are showing you design, ready to bid design concepts right now. But in order for us to get to that stage, I was looking for a little bit of direction. There's sort of 3 different paths that we could take. And before we turn the design team loose on designing a building, I'd kind of like to see if there is a sentiment among the committee as to which direction to go. Because if you choose 3, then Brad has to design 3 buildings, which costs a lot more money. If we design 1, then we can focus on just that 1 and it's more cost effective. So with that said, what I'd like to do now is turn things over to Jim Coulter to talk a little bit about the economic conditions and the environment and the project. And so Jim, I'll go ahead and turn it over to you.
Sure. Thanks, Steve.
Sure.
Unfortunately, this is a lot of discussions I've been having lately, as everybody it's hard to be blind from all the economic conditions we've seen here recently. But if you go to the next slide, so this is really focus on Green Valley, but as Steve said, we've got some information on the other projects as well. One more slide, please. So the escalation in the construction industry has been a little crazy lately, and J. Dunn has their own cost matrix that we do, but we wanted to provide you kind of some third-party information that you could view as well. And the item bold there, the second one down, talks about when you think about construction, and this is all non-residential. The materials typically cost about 50% of the project. And if they increase by 30%, that means the total project increases by almost 15%. And that is really the intent of this slide. And what you can see down below is the bid market it took a little time for them to catch up. But this is our most recent graph, and this was October of 2021, but the blue line at the bottom, you can see is starting to spike. And that's one of the reasons that we're here in front of you today. Next slide. So what we believe, and this is again, some of the forecast, the impacts on the remaining projects. And we'll show you another graph, but if you remember, I guess not everybody were board members at the time, but back in 2017, we worked with the design team and staff to really set the budgets for all 34 of these buildings. And our traditional escalation is to use a 1% per quarter. So that means about 4% per year is what the value of construction costs go up. And there's a bunch of metrics that go into that, but that's kind of our traditional standard. What you'll notice as we go through this is some of these remaining projects from our original anticipated start in 2017 have pushed to the right for one reason or another. And then the overall impact, we are looking at somewhere between $1 and $2 million for Green Valley and East Independence. Next slide, please. So this is the graph that we've used to really to show you at a more granular level. The yellow line on this graph was our projected escalation. That's 1% per quarter. And we set that back in 2017. The dashed line in the middle was our original anticipated start. And if we go all the way over to the right, our anticipated start as of today is third quarter of 2022. And what you could see is in that midpoint, our 1% per quarter, if that building had been built when we originally planned, we were within 1%. We were pretty close to where we thought that was going to land for escalation. But shifting 10 quarters to the right, and then also going through this hyperinflation scenario that the industry has gone through, that has had about a 20% impact from our original budget that we set. And that 20% impact is about $1 million for Green Valley. Next slide. As a point of reference, we wanted to not leave out East Independence. It's on a little bit different but similar path. Again, same yellow line is the 1% per quarter, and the blue line, I didn't explain that before. The blue line is the actual escalation as we track it, as JDUN tracks it. A little bit less of an impact, but it's still around that 20%. And as we met with staff, there may be a possibility that the original square footage of this building may be able to be reduced due to how we've been approaching program. And so the impact overall may not be as severe on East Independence. Next slide. And as we looked at this, we kind of said there's 3 different ways that we can move forward here. Option A is, increase the budget. Let's build buildings like we've been building throughout the program. And the way that we would do that is we would need an increase in funds to meet the increased budget. I'm going to hop down to option C. There are ways that we can change the program and try to meet the budget. And that is an option as well, but it really causes us to decrease the building size and it impacts the program. You're not going to build what you originally anticipated to build. And then option B is more of a hybrid. And that hybrid could scale any direction from A to C. And that's really kind of what we're looking for input from the building committee is how do you want us to move forward? So next slide. We worked with the design team and tried to come up with some of these A, B, and C options. And so option A is really meeting the intent of the program and building having a project that looks like all of the new builds. It's in a range of 6.3 to 6.5 million, and it addresses all the needs for the community of Grand Valley. It was what we would anticipate to build if we didn't have this slide to the right and the hyperinflation. Option B is what we call kind of a cost optimize. We looked at things with the design team on ways to decrease the cost, but not really impact the program or the building that much. And what that resulted in is just some efficiencies. And it has a little bit less of a feature wall, but it still gains you the appropriate size of the community room, collaboration rooms, and the square footage is just reduced slightly. No really reduction in quality whatsoever. And then an option C is really our attempt at this is a path of where we could meet the budget. And there's some things that you will not get with that. Instead of 2 collaboration rooms, there's only 1. The square footage reduces by 15 to 2,500 square feet. The finishes are simplified from what we've been doing in all the other branches. Next slide, please. And then we wanted to make sure that you understood what the design team at JDUN have been going through to really try to find a path here. And what I was even talking with Brent before the meeting, these libraries are not super complex buildings, so they're not huge, right? If you were building a high-rise downtown, you could swing that project if it was a steel structure or concrete structure. But these are 300,000 square feet, and they don't have as dramatic of an impact on these size of buildings. So we looked at many design options, and the only one that we could find that would result in some amount of savings was a load-bearing precast. It really doesn't meet the intent of the design. I mean, we could make it work, but it's different than all the other libraries. It would have an exposed concrete finish on the inside. It's not quite the same. We looked at pre-engineered metal buildings due to the current market trends. It takes about a year to get one of those pre-engineered metal buildings, and hence, you went out another year, another 4 quarters, and it would not be any major savings. We look at structural wood framing. It really doesn't meet the intent. The volatile market with lumber right now, it's back up again at $1,000 a board foot. That thing has moved in the past 6 months from 1,600 a board foot to 500, and it's so volatile. We don't think that would be any major savings. We looked at a structural CMU wall, and that would be an increase in cost. So we've really run the gamut on all the options on how we could construct one of these buildings, and are not finding any major cost savers. One other thing I thought would be a good story. So I told you I've been doing this speech a number of times here lately. And actually I had two meetings at once. One was on Green Valley and once was on another project of mine that is the Lenexa Justice Center. And they are going through a very similar situation. That program, it was master planned. It finished in 2019, and the city of Lenexa, due to COVID, decided to put the brakes on moving forward that project. And for good reason, they said, we're not sure what kind of tax revenues we're going to be having any, and the economy was in flux. And so they decided to pause. We won that project and started working with the design team and the city. And two things happened. One, the program changed a little bit due to how you police 2 years ago than you do today. But then also we've gone through this slide to the right and the hyperinflation. And on that project, we had to go in front of city council. And it's a little different. This is, a one-time building for them. They won't build this for another 40 years, but we had to go to the council and explain the change in programming and the inflation. And they increased the budget to meet the intent of their program. So this is not an uncommon thing that we're doing here today.
Yeah, we're having this similar issues on projects with other clients, and costs have gone up and scope changes and budget changes to deal with it. And I guess that's what we're here today, is to find out if we need to change the scope or if we can change the budget, or a combination of both.
And the one thing that I want to make sure that the committee understands, that staff was not willing to say, yeah, sure, let's just add more money to the budget. That we asked our partners to look at different ways to build the building, to see if there was savings there, different square footage. And I can get into the impact of the square footage. As Jim said, we can build a building for the amount of money that we have, but I think that it's not going to be near the program that we expected. And I'm not talking about building a Taj Mahal. I'm just talking about assuring that they still have today in their, or tomorrow in their new building, what they have today in their rental facility. That if we want to make sure that there's that same program, I don't think that we can do that under today's economic conditions. So, we wanted to be clear, staff wanted to be clear that you understood that we'd had many conversations with our consultants about this and looked under many different rocks before we brought this presentation to you.
Yeah, and if I can add, I think this slide here, it kind of represents that all along the way we have been designing and constructing these facilities has really been the most cost-effective way to do it. But we just wanted to run the traps and make sure that material prices have changed lately, and some things that used to be less expensive are more expensive. So we still needed to go through this exercise. But
that's a very good point, Brad. I mean, you could even see a difference on Green Hills versus Lee Summit. On Lee Summit, we went composite steel due to lead times of bar joists.
Yeah.
Green Hills, we were able to actually get the bar joists when we wanted to, and that fluctuates. I think it's back down to it's almost a little starting to normalize again. But a year ago, it takes you a year to get bar joists. It's actually making our job a little bit harder.
If I'm not mistaken, I think is there another slide or two?
There is one more slide.
Yeah, there we go.
It's kind of Brad's slide.
yeah, so as Steve mentioned, we haven't gone too far down the design on this, but we at least wanted to come up with a concept when we started working on this. Obviously, the property in Green Valley and the history of the farm that's there. And so as we were looking at the design, we wanted to kind of pay homage to that idea of that farm. So we started out with some concepts with barns and different things, and developed a building that just massing wise, this kind of represents a little bit of a nod to the barn idea, but is still a modern and very efficient building design. Again, this is still very preliminary. This is designed so it's scalable, so it works with any of these options, depending on if we want to go full program or if we need to cut. And as Jim said earlier, we've looked at the efficiency of the design, and I mean, it's a pretty efficient design already. But that's the direction we're headed right now with the design concept.
Yeah, I think that is our last slide. Just probably one more thing to point out and just sort of underscore. When Jim was telling his story about Lenexa, I think another thing to draw from that is that as part of that story, Lenexa paused and said, we're going to wait and see what happens. Actually, Jim Coulter and I had the exact same conversation at Dixon's Chili, right about the same time. Should we pause and see what happens? And we decided not to pause. And I think the decision not to pause gave us very favorable pricing on Lee Summit, North Oak, and maybe even Green Hills to a certain extent. So while this may be received as bad news, it could be worse news had we paused.
Yeah, good point.
This is Brent Schunmer. I appreciate the thoroughness of the presentation. So I'm going to encourage us maybe to go back to look at slide 7, and we can pop that up on the screen because that kind of has the key information. It's the option A, option B, option C. So I'm going to call upon you in no particular order and see if you had comments or see if you have questions. Michelle, I'm going to start with you. Thoughts about what you saw or heard?
Totally not surprised.
Okay.
I don't see it getting better anytime soon. So I'm still looking at option A, B, and C. That's about all I can say at the moment.
Okay.
I want to study these a little bit more and just see. The only other thing I kept thinking was, oh my gosh, I'm so glad we have done things the way we've done them and are almost through this and didn't pay as we go the other way.
Yes.
Second that sentiment. So, Yummy, thoughts, questions?
Yeah, my thought is, where's the extra money going to come from?
The extra money, I'll offer up an answer. This is Brent. The extra money can really come from a reduction in the size of East Lee Summit, which we've not.
East Independence.
East Independence. We can decide that we tap additional funds that are available in the budget, and we would have to budget additional monies over and above what might be on the placemat there. There's still some contingencies. We're very, very nearing the end of our total building program, so we can see how it is that this could be fit in with the parameters of the building program that we established. And Yummy, that would be part of the discussion and part of the presentation to the full board about, well, how do we, if we go above our budget, what's the financial strategies associated with to fund the change?
And because we're near the end, we're being even more transparent than we were at the beginning, trying to help Jake and Steve balance because the idea is that we get as much program as we can and land at 0, right? And so we share that information with Jake once a month so he can really understand where we sit on our side.
But Yummy, that is the question. So it's an important one, and it's not one that, is avoided, because choosing, what option we might prefer has some financial impacts, particularly if it's A or B. So, Michael, you go ahead.
Yeah, so is this are we, I know we're near the end of the building program per se. I just wondered if potentially, are we going to come back with another building this may happen to, or is this sort of the last?
The last major building that we have is East Independence. And we have a conversation about land acquisition in closed session. And we don't have any design for that, at this point. And so in some ways, these can be related conversations, or you can sort of see them separately. The other potential impact, I might have misspoke, is actually Riverside, because we've not gone out and done that. So we really have three major building projects left: Riverside, Grain Valley, and East Independence.
Well,
Right.
we may want to consider that as we look at the big picture, because we don't want the last one or two to just take the total hit.
Cody, if you could go back a couple of slides, there's one that go back one more.
This is Michelle. I mean, I guess, do we
One
have
more.
numbers from Quan and all that on, or ideas from him?
On
Creative
operating.
things on getting them.
We have nothing from Quan right now on budgets and operating, but right now revenues are coming in very healthily, in a very healthy way, I should say. And so, I don't think we're going to have a situation where we have revenue shortfalls that we're going to have to address. So I think there will be options.
I'm just worried that I know revenues are coming in now.
Yeah, they're coming in strong. They're
Not trying to be a Debbie Downer or anything. I just feel like next year we're going to see a different with this. I mean, I see a lot more people being late because they, have to put gas in their tanks and food on their table. So I think I see things are going to be a little bit different. So,
Steve,
yes,
this is the Quan. Steve, I believe we have enough money right now on hand to finish the $117 million capital improvement plan.
Right. Okay. Yeah. And
thank you, Quan. That was kind of what I was looking for.
Yeah. Sorry about that, Michelle. I don't think I fully appreciated the question. My fault. But I think that we do have enough to finish the $117 million. The conversation that we had with the Finance Committee kind of showed that we were going to start looking at putting away money to maintain the buildings. If we defer maintenance by a year, that could be enough to make up the gap. Cody, if you go back, I think it's one more slide, maybe. Keep going.
Yeah, but how smart is that, Steve?
Pardon?
How smart is that for us to defer maintenance for a year?
It shouldn't be a significant risk at this particular point in time. If you consider that all of our buildings are either newly constructed or just significantly maintained,
okay,
deferral of maintenance of a 1-year-old building is pretty low risk compared to deferring the maintenance of a 20-year-old building. So
okay.
Yeah. So this was the slide that I was looking for. Thank you for finding it, Cody. So if you actually look at this, and this gets to Yummy's point, we are looking at all three projects right now. Even though we really are focusing on Grain Valley, you can see that there is escalation impact, not only for Grain Valley, but also for East Independence and potentially for Riverside if we move forward with Riverside. So we are actually looking at this holistically. I want to be an optimist. And so, it could be as little for the two remaining projects on the original capital plan, it could be as low as $1.2 million, which is, I'm talking like it's pocket change. It's not, I realize that, but $1.2 million, there's 700,000 to 800,000 in contingency. So the gap's about $500,000 on that, which is doable. Now, Riverside brings in a new variable, but I'd like to set that aside for a second. But in terms of the two remaining projects on the original 2016 ask of the voters, it looks like we might be, short between $500,000 and 800,000. Is that fair, Jim?
Yeah.
I mean, if we're able to catch a couple of breaks and
try to just land at zero. Yeah.
Michael, thoughts?
You're on mute, Michael.
Yeah, I think he's talking, but he might be on mute.
Yeah, hi.
There you
Okay,
go.
sorry. I didn't unmute, but like Michelle and the others, I'm not surprised just because when you look around at everything else, and I'm watching a new high school being built in Platte City and kind of looking at all the things that they've had to go through similar to this. Again, I am concerned about funds coming in. And deficits and all that kind of stuff. But yet I want to be optimistic, as Steve, you put it, and, press through, but I don't want to be unwise in doing so, at the risk of all sorts of things. So looking at this slide we're looking at right now, so Riverside is just kind of outside the parameters, I guess, from what we're talking about right now. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's neither fish nor fowl. I mean, we're keeping our eye on it. The way staff has always looked at this is that we made a specific promise on Riverside. And the promise on Riverside was really just a light touch. When we decided to review this additionally, we kind of removed it from the capital plan for political purposes, but for contractual purposes, it became work package 16. So, so the answer to your question, Michael, is yes. It's both. I mean, but we're not ignoring it, but we're really focusing on Green Valley and East Independence because
Right.
that was part of the political consideration.
Right, with the Proposition L situation.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
And so if I understand this correctly, in looking at the overall picture, then we would have a deficit of approximately $500,000. Is that what we said?
For those two projects, yeah, the Green Valley and East Independence, what Jim Coulter and I were talking about was that, we right now have a contingency setting around $700,000.
Okay.
And so 700,000 is in the bank, and then we'd have to make up the difference, which could be somewhere in the neighborhood of, if we hit lower side of the middle of the escalation, it would be somewhere in the neighborhood of 500 to 800,000.
Low side 500, I think the mid to high 800.
Yeah.
Okay.
So-
All right.
so-
And that's
Sorry, Michael.
that's based on not reducing the size of the buildings or the construction that we've already looked at. It's basically going with the plan as is. Is that correct?
I would say it's the middle way, correct?
Yeah, I think it makes a smart choice to go with the optimized version because we don't think we're really impacting program when we go to the optimized. It was just being smart and being even more efficient.
Right. So it's not, yeah, so it's not building it out to the extent that we talked about in 2016, but it's building it out, frankly, pretty close to what we would have built it out had we not had this situation. Because we've discovered through the course of the building program, we appreciate some economy of scale and some of the ordering of finishes and things like that. We've also discovered how we lay out the building. It doesn't need to be quite as large if you build
Right.
brand new and lay it out correctly. And so this building probably, I think when we went to the voters, we said that it's probably going to be about 17.5. I think it's
This one was 15.
yeah, it's 15 and we may be able to get a little bit lower than 15 based on program and based on the numbers that I've been given. That middle way program that we showed you has 2 collaboration rooms. Existing building has 2 collaboration rooms. The community room at the existing building is 400 square feet. The new building would be 600 square feet, 650 square feet. Has a drive-up window. Existing building doesn't have a drive-up window. Collection size would accommodate more than the existing building, marginally more than the existing building. And so we feel like that middle way is definitely an improvement to what the community has.
So this is Brent. I'm going to pull different strands from different conversations I heard. Yemi, you said, well, let me start a different place. if this was building project number 8 and this is the slides we were looking at, I just would put my head down on the table because, you could see what it looked like in the path forward and what it looks like over time. You had the comment, it just happens to be Green Valley is last on the list. And so this is a question, if you're last on the list, does that mean that you should get less? And so that's kind of a general question that's out there. Steve has some sense of this, but Green Valley is really a growing community from a population, standpoint, and it represents an existing branch of service. East Independence would be a brand new location for which it would be a brand new library, and that project is down at $6.4 million on the placemat. Thoughtful consideration could say, well, is that really what is needed for a brand new location as opposed to taking the money, investing it in an existing location? And I've always had a view of this is that these are like 25-year investments, and that some of this can be realized on the operational side, more efficient building, a better library service, and smaller sort of square footage. So I'm inclined, and I'm thoughtful and mindful of the financial considerations. So I'm glad Juan is on here to try to go back. If we go back to, I think it's slide 7 or whatever it is, the hybrid sort of approach, because I think the hybrid sort of approach acknowledges the construction cost, tries to sort of like maximize what's available and possible, is an improvement over what it is that our existing facility is. Which is nothing special, I should tell you. If you've been out there, there's nothing particularly distinctive or unusual or makes you feel excited about being in a library space. And it's in a rental facility, and that postponing or delaying this for the graphs that you sort of see only just said is that a later date only means a greater cost. So I'm of a general view that the hybrid approach makes sense, but the other part, not all our committee members are present. This is on YouTube. We can encourage them to go back and take a look, and they can have the benefit of the discussion. But we don't want to be, if our last meeting was October and we don't meet until March, you can only understand is that the graph is going to an ever upward march. And so trying to provide a timely direction so that we can get this in front of the board with an appropriate financing plan. And so we can get out to the market to secure the bids before they increase is kind of where my head is at.
Agreed. That was the motivation of staff. What staff was looking to do was to get a direction. So if we brought this to the committee and everyone on the committee was resoundingly in favor of, let's just say option A, just for sake of argument, then Brad would start designing option A, and Quan and I would start lining up bake sales or something, because we'd have to come up with a lot of additional money. But what I am hearing today is that there is a feeling. No one's carving anything in stone, but there's a feeling that I'm hearing from the committee that we should direct Brad and the design team to work on the optimized version, option B, to try to get the schematic design and the design documents lined up. In the meantime, Quan and I can continue to work on the financing side of it. And there will be a realization. I mean, part of the report from the committee is that there's a realization that the GMP is going to be above target. It's going to be significantly above target because of this, but that staff will come back with some sort of a solution to help us meet target. That's what I'm hearing.
Right. So GMP is guaranteed maximum price.
Thank you.
Always.
Sorry.
We'll interject that. And understand is that whatever we're looking for some kind of consensus today, there are other decision points later that will come back that, we will get a guaranteed maximum price that comes back to us. We can then have the reality of the firm numbers. We will have a chance to do a more thorough financing plan relative to what it is and relative to the total program. But the part of it is we don't want to, I'm starting to use this word more and more in my life, dawdle. And if there is a sentiment that we can proceed in a particular direction because proceeding in a direction gets us information for which we can make appropriate discussions and considerations. This would come back to the building committee. We would try to get this in front of the board in an expeditious manner, given what it is that we see is happening in the construction costs. So, Yummy, thoughts, Michelle, Michael?
Well, this is Michael, and as I'm looking at this summary of the option A, B, and C, hopefully I can articulate what I'm want to question is, I guess, if you look at option C, which meets the budget, it's a little bit smaller building for sure. And it has one collaboration room instead of two. And I guess one of my questions is, do we really need two collaboration rooms? I know that's what we originally set out to do. And I guess, so I'm just asking the question, do we really need two? And is option C, since it's on the board, on the table, I know what we want and really like to have, but it makes more sense to try to come in on the budget than maybe option C would be good.
Yeah, the removal of the room itself is not the driver. So a collaboration room is just a few square feet. It's not even 100 square feet, I don't think. It's about 100. And so in terms of square footage, it's not having a large impact. I think the reason that we pulled out the collaboration room as an example, not only the one versus the two, but that the existing building has two. So when we build the new building, they'll actually have less service than the old building. And it has been something that has been extremely well received. And certainly in terms of our other buildings, frankly, we could have doubled all the collaboration rooms in all of our buildings and we'd still be having wait lists. It's one of the most popular things that we've done in terms of the building, in terms of the building program.
Okay, so really the only thing that makes the difference is the less square footage. Is that?
Yes. Yeah. And yes, and the lower square footage or the smaller square footage, the less square footage does impact, although we've got collection size being comparable to Lone Jack on both of these. It's Lone Jack. I would argue it's Lone Jack with a shoehorn on option C, and it's Lone Jack comfortably on option B. Neither one is particularly appealing to me because, as Brent mentioned, Grain Valley is a community of 15,000 people. Lone Jack's a community of 1,000 people, a little more than 1,000 people. It would be an inadequate library collection, I would argue, for a community of that size.
Finishes would be simpler as well. It would not match what you see in the new buildings today.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yummy?
Yeah, this is.
Go ahead, Yummy.
Yeah, sorry, Michelle. Yeah, it's a really hard call, and I know we need to make some decisions quickly. I just feel like we can't make this decision real quick because a lot of stuff is happening. We don't totally know what's coming, even with the economy. And I very much would like it to look as similar, as nice, as the other builds. However, I don't know. I just have a real hesitancy about increasing the budget significantly because I just don't feel right about that. So many people are losing their jobs, possible food shortage. I mean, just a lot of things going on right now that make me very hesitant to, to just do things to increase the budget that much, unless we just really have to see if we have the money we can pull from someplace else. what we're going to do. So I don't know. That's just my thoughts, is that, yes, I think you're right that the prices are only going up, yet I just don't know because of a lot of unknowns in the economy right now.
Thank you. Michelle?
Yeah, I'm struggling with this because I know that this is going to be needed. Like, I know this is going to be needed. So I hate to scale something back for a growing community. I don't know. Do we have to have a decision on this today? Because I'm still kind of, I don't know that I can make one.
No, Michelle, we don't. And, I
Okay.
mean, we can get additional information. And, my thought is try to get back together when everybody is available in a week or 2 weeks and sort of go through this again in a fashion. So don't want time pass.
Yeah, I mean, I do feel better because Quan says, the
Yeah.
money's there. I do hate to wait too much longer. I know how important those community rooms are and all that stuff. So, and collaboration rooms, I hate, so doing away with those, I don't think is an option, or anything like that. I mean, I don't know. I need to think a little bit more.
Okay. We can ask Katina to show population growth and get some of that additional information.
I think that would be good. I mean, because I think there's
it's 15,000, right? It was 10,000 10 years ago. It's 15,000 now. It's supposed to be 17,000 in 10 years.
Yeah.
I mean, I just know that.
And I'm going to offer, what might be a counter notion is that East Independence, the growth is not occurring there occurring there in the way that everybody has imagined and I live in Independence for the past 25 years. So it's the imagined sort of growing, sort of burgeoning sort of community. And we put a placeholder in there anticipating that in some time over a 20-year period, that growth very well may occur. So if I were to make a choice today, I would reduce the size of East Independence, which is an existing level of service, and make the appropriate level of investment in Grain Valley, which is a growing community and has an existing level of services. And if you look at the placemat, Independence is down 6.4. Understand is that the escalation has the same impact on that, but in some senses, fully commit to an appropriate size for Grain Valley, and then make the adjustment really around East Independence because there is no library there, there is no service there. Potter has made the suggestion at some point is that the Farview location that we did, meets the obligation of providing new library service in Eastern Independence. We'll have some discussion in closed session about East Independence and what land might look like, and that might help sort of, form. So I'm not looking at these as one project by itself. I'm looking at like the totality of the projects, and we may be reserving an amount of money for East Independence, which isn't really justified by population and the availability of our other libraries to serve those communities. So I look at Grain Valley and I think it's a real need. I look at East Independence and I wonder, why and where and how much. And so to me, there's a stronger case for the investment in Grain Valley than there is in the East Independence at this particular moment.
Yeah, and actually that's an answer to the question. I mean, where would the money come from? We could actually build, what staff is recommending. I mean, staff is essentially recommending option B, and I think we might have been recommending option B anyway. I mean, because we had been optimizing our buildings, our new builds, even when this wasn't as much of a crunch. And so, the question, where would the money come to make up the difference between option B and option C is potentially from East Independence, because we really just don't know about building East Independence. And that money's there. It's setting, as Juan mentioned, it's sitting in the bank right now.
So I have a question about East Independence. Did you finish, Steve?
Sure. Yes, I did. Yes.
I'm sorry, I didn't want to cut you off.
No, that's okay.
Yeah, with East Independence, if there is not a large existing need right now, is there any way we could master plan East Independence to be built sort of in stages?
Tell me Steve's thinking, I'm going to provide you an answer. There's nothing that says we have to build East Independence in 2023. We could acquire a site, we could land bank it, we could see if the population develops and grows. We could have a better understanding about, what is an appropriate library sort of service. So there's nothing that compels us to go. We can sort of set it aside or set it on pause. Understand the construction, inflation things all come into play. So it has been impressive. I've asked Jim Coulter to get us this document. Some of us were on the board that said, and Michelle made this in her comments, is we had like a pay as you go. As the money came in, we would build a library. We took this stance, interest rates were low, let's go borrow the funds. We could accelerate the program. And the pay as you go really had us building these libraries over a 21 or a 22 year period. And accelerating them and doing them in the fashion that we did has saved us a lot of money, which the graphs now show. And we were well served by taking that sort of approach. But there was no commitment that we made in our public campaign for Proposition L that said, you're going to have a new library and we gave you a fixed date. It just said is at some point with these additional resources, we would build these libraries. We could very well build a new library in East Independence in 2030 if we chose to, given, there's no obligation if you would to build it now and build it today or build it at this level or build it at this cost.
I wanted to mention one thing.
Okay.
Yummy, you mentioned is you don't really know what's happening in the future, and we don't either. I mean, it's crystal balling, but instead of that progressive 1% per quarter, what we've put in these graphs is actually 2%. So it's more than we would have normally anticipated, understanding what the market is doing in today's world. So this is Brent. I'm going to suggest that Frank, this is a very good discussion. We learn things that we need to know that we may not want to hear, but we need to hear them. I'm going to suggest that we try to get another building committee schedule. Maybe, we'll work with staff 2 weeks out and make sure that the other committee members are available. Some questions were raised that I think that we can get staff to pull together the information. If you have other questions that come to mind now, you might say them or suggest them, or something comes up a little bit later. Please, let Steve know and we will pull that. I think the real question that I heard, the theme was, can we afford to finance this? And, we need to come back and sort of, provide that information and show you to what that financing might look like.
Yeah. And I think what I would want to say is that, the quick answer to Brent's question is yes, we can do that, but at what cost? What will we choose not to do because we choose to do option B or because we choose to move ahead with East Independence. So we can do that. We can do that quickly. The thing I don't want to do though is get into a four corners offense on this. I mean, because if we continue to, I'm sorry, that was a basketball sports analogy. I didn't mean to do that. But if we really consider this and continue to contemplate, it's just only going to be more problematic for us. So
This is Michelle. Hopefully I'm unmuted. Yep, I think I am.
yes.
Yeah, I mean, I'm more willing to go along with like what Brent is suggesting, and I, with like maybe doing a little bit less at the option B or whatever. Based off of, Brent lives in the community, and I mean, you guys know the community better than I do. I mean, doing nothing's not an option. And I mean, I feel pretty strongly that a lot of these outlying areas, I mean, they need these facilities. So, I mean, I think once we have maybe a little bit more input, I'll be a little bit more, I'll be a little bit better about it, but I would lean, I mean, if I had to make a decision right now, which I know I don't, but if I had to, I could see option B as being reasonable.
I'm going to suggest that we kind of close out this conversation and then, and I think we need to go into closed session because we have land acquisition and it really relates to property acquisition. And it actually happens to do with East Independence. And there's some information in that closed session that might be instructive or informative to this particular conversation. So if that's okay with folks, if somebody can make a motion to go into closed session for property acquisition, that would be helpful.
So moved. Let's go into
Okay,
closed session.
I'm going to say that the minutes reflected what you read on the screen.
Sure.
And is there a second?
Second, this is yeah.
Okay, thank you, Yemi. So we're going to go into closed session.